The Kremlin, that means a fortress inside a city, is a fortified complex in the center of Moscow, on the western side of Red Square. The Kremlin was built between the 14th and 17th century by outstanding Russian and foreign architects. According to evidence, was the residence of the great prince and also a religious center. Basically, the Kremlin was a Russian refuge, a self-contained city with many palaces, armories, and churches. It stands on the left bank of the Moscow River, where it joins the Neglinaya River. Geographically, it stands on a high ridge at the watershed between the two rivers. The area occupied by the Kremlin, within the limits of the fortified walls, is 27.5 hectares. Surrounding the city there is a red brick wall, along with 20 towers, constructed at the end of the 15th century by Italian master builders invited to Moscow by Ivan the Great. The outline of the Kremlin is an irregular triangle that stretches 676 meters from west to east and 639 meters from northwest to southeast, with 25 meters high. There are quite a few poetic legends rooted in the Kremlin's story, such as a legend about the hermit Bukol whose hut stood in the backwoods on a hill, or the another one about the famous boyar Kuchka, whose good and red villages caught the fancy of the future founder of Moscow. It's believed that the site of the Kremlin was inhabited as far back as 500 BC, although the city of Moscow only dates back to around 1147. This is the point at which wooden fort was constructed on the site by Yuri Dolgorukhy. Despite being razed by the invading Mongols in 1208, the city continued to grow and was acknowledged by the Russian Orthodox Church in 1326. It was around this time that the first stone buildings were built in the Kremlin, before being fortified with stone walls at the end of the 15th century. The Kremlin became the center of a unified Russian state under the reign of Ivan the Great from 1462 to 1505, and was extensively remodeled during that time. The Kremlin was composed by different buildings, such as the walls and the towers. Most of the main towers were designed by Pietro Solario, including the Spasskaya Tower, topped with its iconic red star and black and gold clock face. Also, there was the cathedrals. At the heart of the Kremlin complex is Cathedral Square. Around these are grouped three cathedrals that are seen as exemplary forms of Russian ecclesiastical architecture from the late 15th and early 16th century. At the end, palaces. One of the oldest surviving structures of the Kremlin is Ivan the Great Palace of Sets. Built in 1491 to hold imperial thrones, this palace is characterized by its distinctive facade of sharp-edged white stones in horizontal rows. The Kremlin contains within its walls a unique series of masterpieces of architecture and the plastic arts. Also, the Kremlin preserves the memory of the wooden fortifications erected by Yuri Dolgorukhy around 1156 on the hill at the confluence of the Moskova and Neglinaya rivers.